Hello and welcome back to MEIOU and Texas Europa Universalis 4. So basically we left off in the first episode at looking at the start date and getting some explanations what to expect. And now we want to dive into the game a bit more. So we pick a nation and we can check out what it does, what it is set up with, how it looks like, and maybe some recommendation into what you might want to pick if this is your first time. Even if it's your second or third time, I will do some recommendations here, what to expect and what might be good options. So for example, let's start with something I would heavily recommend if it is your first time. So because we have some tags or like nations here, which are very, very dependent on events and have complicated chains, which is, for example, France and England, which have event chains here in regards to the 100 Years War, which I would not recommend in a first playthrough, because they can be quite complex and you might lose a war and then you might get frustrated because a lot of things might happen to your empire here, or you don't know what exactly is politically happening to you. The same is basically to be said about Poland or Bohemia, which will end up in complicated situations due to the Lithuanian marriage here, but also Bohemia, which will eventually and surely run into religious turmoil. So you will have problems with the first dissidents of the Catholic Church, let's say, like this, like 50 years from now. Bohemia will have a problem, which can surprise you quite a lot if you don't know what you're doing, basically. Now, if you want to do something more peaceful, or rather with options in many directions, you could, for example, go for Portugal to go into a colonial empire. You could play something like Tunis to be on the sidelines of everything, but you could also play something like Naples, which is very beginner-friendly due to its location in the southern tip of Italy. So it has potentials to go into the Holy Roman Empire, but it could also just go into the Balkans and have a little bit of a fight with the Ottomans, depending on what you like and what you want to do. It also has a very varied and nice setup of national ideas, which you can use to build up your empire, basically. And from there you can move forward in whatever you want to do. Other nations which are pretty nice to do are like Milan and Austria, which have a lot of options into how you want to play them. Like if you want to go for emperorship in the HIE, you can do this here. But also you could play something peaceful like Sweden, Denmark, which will go into personal unions and everything as you know it from the base game. This is basically Europe, and I would definitely recommend for your first time to play something in Europe. If you really want to experience a bit more complications in other regards, which I will probably touch in the next episode when we talk about estates and political setup of realms, which we will touch in a few seconds, then you could also go to India, for example, to play something like southern India, Bengal, or Hindustan itself. But you could also play something like Mali, which is a major state here in West Africa. I would definitely recommend to play something like middle size here in this regard, or large size, because it's financially, economically more stable. Do not go, for example, for a one-tech province here in central Germany if you don't know how the mod works. Also, I do not recommend to play the Eastern Empire or Eastern Roman Empire if you don't know how you can make military, how you can get more manpower and force limit to beat the Ottomans, because then you are in for a defeat, basically. Also, I can recommend to play something here in East Africa, because it's in general relatively peaceful, but a bit more complicated, because it has a very different political setup than, for example, the feudalistic states in Europe. Now we are going to jump into one state here to just showcase how a political setup might look like and what you maybe want to look out for. So of course the national ideas here will give you a good feeling about what the country is about. For example, Naples here has quite some benefits to education, economy, and corruption. So basically, it's a very politically and economically set up nation, which you can then use to build a better military or fund a military which can fund your conquests, for example. And that's quite useful if you are new to this, basically. And we are going to look deeper into Naples here to see what that means. So I will click on play and let it load, because the game will load for a while. It's a bit slow here, but the mod is very complex. So I will jump to the point when the mod has fully loaded up this nation. Okay, here we are and jumped into Naples. And you always want to wait for the Welcome to MEIOU and Texas 3.0 version event here, which is basically a thank you to the team and can explain to you some stuff about the mod, where you can read things, can change some settings about like difficulty. You can change the settings afterward if you want to, but also things like culture conversion, religion, and so on. And basically, so many thanks to the team for making this mod possible. I'm Corliss here, part of this team, speaking to you right now. And basically, if you don't want to change anything, you can just set let the game begin here. Click array all of this stuff. Depending on the tech you choose, you have a bit more of the government reforms abolished or not. Just ignore it, because it's just some stuff which is getting changed from the vanilla base game here, which is getting set in the background. Now, the UI and the screen you see with the information you have is immediately slightly different than maybe what you are used to. But the key information you will still find here with the same icons, which is basically your legitimacy, stability, corruption, prestige, power projection, manpower, money. You will always start negative in the income, but it will get recalculated in the 1st of February. So then you get a proper income. And of course your admin, diplo, and military powers. What you want to look out for in your first steps basically is, okay, how does my realm look like? And before I dive into these provinces here, which I'm not going to do in this episode, as you can see, the UI of these provinces is very different to what you may be used to. But the core information you have here is the development, which represents how rich your population or how rich this province is. For example, we have 36 total development here, consisting of 22, 12, and 2. And other provinces have completely different development levels. You can check a lot of these tooltips here, which will provide you with a lot of additional information and showing you the complexity of what you have opened up here in this mod. Now, to get started, however, you have most of the time an army and a navy, some merchants, some diplomats. You can use them as you know it from whatever you played before. In EU4, conquest and everything is pretty much the same. The only thing that is, of course, very important to note is that your army is connected to your population. If you kill it, you lose actual population in your province, because it's derived from your population as recruitable manpower. So very important to note, you really play with your own people here. Now, if you go into your tech itself, and when you click on the flag over here, you can jump into different information layers here. The most important one at the start is, of course, to check your king, and if you have an heir and maybe you want to do something about it, get some marriages going, get some advisors going, and then you can click through everything else. You get some more country modifiers here, which also might explain stuff to you. And what you want to look out for is the last tag here, a tab as the first information, is the estates. Because the deepest information layer and data level you have here is your state itself. And the values to look out for is basically what kind of estates are dominating your realm. We have the nobility, the burghers, the tribes, and the clergy, which will be each part of the next episodes, where I will look at each of these estates, including the bureaucracy here, and talk about some key features basically of these estates and how to handle them and what to do and why are they important and what do you need to take care of. But basically, when you check this, you will have a feeling about, okay, do I have mostly noble people, which is the nobility, which run my realm, which means I'm very feudalistic at start. Do I have a lot of burghers? So if the power value here is high, so we have 75% nobility, which is a very powerful noble country. We only have 24% on the burghers and 43% on the clergy, which means that the nobility and the clergy at start are relatively dominating this country. While the bureaucracy here has only 10% state reach, which means we really don't have a lot of say here in this state. You also have the pie chart here, which can show you resources, property shares, and wealth shares. Let's check the wealth, for example. What you can see here is that the clergy owns 27% of all the values in the country. The burghers also 27%, and 44% are in the hands of the nobility, and 2% are owned by the lower class, which is basically peasants, residents, and whoever lives anywhere, which is not a noble of the first, second, or third estate, basically. And this gives you a rough feeling what you want to do, and maybe on which episodes in the next part you maybe want to pay attention to, when I tell you about what these estates do and how you can interact with them and what they are important for. Over the course of this mod, you want to develop your country politically, economically, and religiously. So for example, you maybe want to reform the church to no longer be of influence, which means the clergy. You maybe want to make a more bureaucratic state so that you can tax people more efficiently and therefore have more money for military conquest. Or you maybe just want to appease your current estates to just go on conquering stuff and keeping the status quo as it is right now. Or you maybe just want to focus on economic development, so you just care about taxations, getting money out of your estates to improve your development levels, which means that you maybe want to build infrastructure, which is also something I just show here, which I will show in a separate episode, where I will explain the economic side of this mod. Now, the next thing you maybe want to check out if you pick a realm is where it is situated on the map. Now you can see the trade nodes here. You can also see a lot of information is here shown on this trade node map mode. But basically you want to check, okay, how am I connected to everything? So we are Naples, we are here in the Mediterranean Sea, we are in the Tyrrhenian Sea and in the Adriatic Sea. And now we want to maybe consider, okay, I want to get access to more nodes here. So maybe I want to conquer into the Aegean Sea to also get access into these trade nodes here. Or into maybe Tunis to get into North Africa's trade nodes here, for example. There are other ways to access new nodes, but basically conquest is the simplest one, which I want to highlight here, because resources here are a common good, basically, which is the last thing I'm going to show in this episode. But basically, you have a trade price list here. We have a lot of goods in this mod. For example, food is its own unique good which your provinces produce. And therefore, for example, you want to expand your income of food by conquering more farmland, by conquering more provinces like Egypt, which produce a lot of food. But maybe also you want to look for regions where prices are lower so that you can access products of other realms, conquer it maybe, to get access to these cheaper productions, cheaper goods, and therefore increase the value that your country has access to. Also important here in this regard is the autonomy. So the autonomy layer here is relatively similar to what you are used to. Lower autonomy is better because you get more out of these provinces. In this case, in this mod, it means more taxation on your provinces or more dues that your nobles pay to you as their king. or duchy, duchess, whatever. And in the end, you want to get this as low as possible, for which you need to do certain things with the estates, which I'm going to dive into later. And when you conquer stuff, you of course will inherit autonomy problems, because newly conquered provinces will start with a high autonomy and will take a while to get lower autonomies, which you need to manage basically. If you, for example, play as another realm, Naples here is relatively noble heavy, but if you, for example, play Genoa, which is mostly a merchant republic, then you will see a completely different setup of estates. I can only recommend to check out different texts. How are they made up? What do they have? And consider the next episodes about the estates in detail. That's why I'm going to say see you in the next episode now, because we are going to start with the state itself, which means we are going to look at the bureaucracy. What does it mean to be a king in this mod? And what are your duties? And what do you need to keep an eye on to keep everyone happy and avoid destruction or a civil war with your estates? So leave a like and see you in the next episode.